Welcome back for another episode of Sunday SoulDay, fueling your mind, body, and soul with soulful conversations and life-changing insights. From military intelligence to Silicon Valley's investment scene, today's guest has lived many lives, each shaped with resilience, reinnovation, and relentless pursuit of meaning. We're joined by Ari Block, the host of Story Samurai and author of Engineering Excellence Unlocked. He shares powerful lessons from his time in military service, building high performing software teams, to recovering lost multi-million dollar projects, and now investing in a new wave of visionary founders. Let's welcome him to the show. Welcome to Sunday SoulDay, Ari.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you for saying yes. And my goodness, I could not wait to talk to you because you have such an incredible background that spans so many different industries and verticals. And now you have a podcast of your own that we'll get into a little bit later. But wanted to just start with your background because your path spans, like I said, so many different things from military intelligence to tech leadership to investing and now podcasting. What was the through line for you that connects kind of all of those different journeys that you've been on?
Wow. It's a hard question because I don't think there is a line.
Okay.
What's happened over my career is, just like anybody, right? You have a job or an opportunity, and then you're like, okay, if you need to find a next job, you get fired, or you just feel like it's enough, and you take that next step. So, all of those things have happened to me. Early on in my career, I was in the military and I was like, I'm going to leave the military. And my wife was like, you're crazy. Like, you've got such a great job and you're good pay and they're offering to pay for your school. And I was like, sure, but it's going to be boring. It's not going to challenge me. And I think that it's going to be, great opportunities outside. So I took a leap of faith. If you think about what happened afterwards, I basically created a unicorn. So the company today is worth $1 billion, almost $1 billion. Um, I was a huge part of that pivot because the company was about to fail. And me and Ron and Adi, we kind of pivoted the company into forensics and it turned into a unicorn. But at the time, we had no idea that's what we were doing. We just had a problem, kind of solved it. And then when we did it and it just became boring, I kind of moved on. So it's just the normal things that everybody make their decisions. And I think really what's interesting is not kind of the luck of what happens to you. It's kind of what's important to you and why you make decisions. That's really where I kind of think about it. But in all honesty, a lot of my kind of thinking is in retrospect. So it's kind of, now as I'm more mature, it's more about the decisions I make today and in the future, because a lot of life is just luck.
Oh my gosh. Yes. And very true. And I think sometimes those decisions are made fear-based, because maybe
Yeah,
we are terminated or, and sometimes they're made in joy, or in
yeah,
love. And you're like, I'm trying
yeah.
something new. I'm going to test myself and test my water. So it's just really interesting because you have such a unique, kind of background. But talk to me a little bit about, building a unicorn because we hear that. I know,
Yeah,
in tech, everyone's trying to build the unicorn, right?
yeah,
Or get to unicorn status. Now I think they're, a little bit more realistic and focusing on elephant status, but that's a completely different,
yeah,
different
yeah.
ball game. But what was that like? I mean, building
We didn't know.
that. You
We
didn't
didn't
know.
know. No,
I
we
love
didn't.
that
We
you
weren't.
say that.
We didn't know. We didn't know we were
Love
building a
it.
unicorn. We weren't even trying to build a unicorn. We
Wow.
were trying to not fail.
Wow.
And I'm a Techstars alumni, and if you know Techstars, it's one of the top, let's say, three accelerator programs in the world. It's easier to get into Harvard than it is to get into Techstars. And if you just look at the statistics, right? So as a Techstars alumni, what they teach us is just one thing. And this guy, Warren, he's one of my favorite mentors. I would consider him a friend. I don't think he would consider me a friend, but that's a different topic. But he's definitely helped me out in some really tough spots. And Warren just says one thing, and I think he's brilliant. He says, stay alive, stay afloat, stay alive, and that's it. That's it. Just get to tomorrow, get to next year. And he says, don't think about unicorns, don't think about exits, like it doesn't matter. Just stay alive. And the way to stay alive is to have happy customers and to deliver good products, and to do a good job and to create value. And that's it. So I think that we weren't trying to create a unicorn, but we were doing all the things that you need to do in order to create a unicorn, which is stay alive, because if your company's going to shut down, you got nothing, and then deliver value. And what happened is, I don't know how much of the story you want to get into, but I'll give you the highlights. I figured out that the company's going to fail because I was looking at kind of statistics of usage of the product. And then I also figured out that a huge threat is coming from Google and Apple in the future. So I came to the executive team and I basically said, look, we're in deep trouble. And then the executive team was like, okay, you're right. We see what you're seeing. And then Ari from United States, he's retired, great guy. He has a mouth of a pirate, curses so much, but he would make me laugh like every 3 seconds. So Ari was like, "Hey, why don't we do forensics?" And Ron and I were like, "Okay, what does that mean?" And so Ari says, like, "Well, we're copying stuff from one phone to another's when people want to like back up their phones and change to a new phone. Why don't we just create a police report for that?" And we're like we didn't really get it. We didn't see the potential. We didn't do market research. We were just like, yeah, we could do that. It would be easy. So our question to Adi, because he was head of sales, he was CEO, but he was the sales CEO. So Adi, we asked Adi, can you sell this? And can I curse on the show?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So Adi responds, and I quote, "Fuck yeah." And he did. He sold his ass off. If there's one person I had to attribute, that unicorn to, it would be Adi. He did it. He sold so much of this product, and there is not a law enforcement officer, agency, person, police in the world that does, from Europe to America, everywhere, that do not know who Celebrite is. And that was Adi selling his ass off. Now it's a unicorn and it's a company of thousands of people, but I joined as employee number 13 and I hired most of the people until we became 100 people. And it was a small operation. But because of Adi's idea and him being able to sell it and him having that confidence, Celebrite is what it is today. And I got to tell you, that's where I give the credit. It's him. I was just a cog that helped push it in the right direction.
Wow, wow, and wow. That's first of all, I love that quote from him. That's awesome. But such great advice that you got from the Techstars leaders, and I apologize, I forgot his name.
Yeah, Warren
Yeah,
Katz.
Warren. I mean, that is liquid gold, because I think a large part of why startups fail is because they go in with that mentality, and they get with VC firms that are like scale, 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 and everything is big. They don't even have product market fit half the
Yeah,
time, So
yeah,
I love that you really gave that, nugget to our audience. And
yeah,
it's even for people who aren't building, unicorn companies, but just like entrepreneurs, like starting off, like that is really what we're doing. We're surviving. We're just, trying not to die, get to the next, thing. But also like delivering great work, And so did some of those guiding principles, like, that you kind of took there, like, did it start early in your career, like when you were in, military, like how did it shape your
uh,
mindset around pressure? Because there's so much pressure in a startup,
yeah.
but also just your guiding principles as a leader.
Well, my dad was a complete ass.
Okay.
He, at 8 years old, he would wake us up 3 o'clock in the morning because his printers or his email or his whatever didn't work, and we were his IT support. And he would wake us up. He was unhappy with the world, unhappy with us,
Yep.
and we would fix it 3 o'clock in the morning. So being a son of an entrepreneur is not great. I do not recommend it to anybody. But the problem is it's infectious. We got that entrepreneurial spirit from him. Um, you know, and because of that, when I was 8, watching him and watching my older brother, I started a business. I was charging $200, the modern day equivalent of $200 an hour, and people would pay an 8-year-old that, and I was in shock. And then when I was 15, I started yet another business and sold that one for modern day equivalent of $250,000 at the age of 15. So, I think it did come from home. In my case, my brother is the CEO of a diamond company. My other brother is an investor for real estate, but they weren't that when I was young. But my dad was, right? He was a publisher, basically, he wrote books. So, it definitely came from home 100%.
No, it's so interesting because those imprints, whether they're, good seeds or not so great seeds, right?
The
Getting
good, the
woken
bad,
up
and
at
the ugly.
yeah. Getting woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning at 8 does not feel like a
Yeah.
good seed, but it's those imprints that you see as a kid that really do shape you in one way or another. And so to be able to channel it in the way that you've done time and time again with creating, it just seems like you're very much an entrepreneur, at heart.
You know what? I think that a lot of entrepreneurs have such an ego problem that they only talk about their successes. I will tell you that I have massive failures. I've lost people, I've lost relationships that I care deeply about, and I've lost shitloads of money, right? And just recently, I lost $50,000. Entrepreneurship is not a dream. It's not a beautiful thing that everybody should aspire to. It's got a lot of stuff that is incredibly painful. So, I think we need to take the good with the bad. And if you don't have an ego problem, then you'll be willing to share also your failures. And I've had quite a few of those. And I would argue that every single entrepreneur fails at least half as much as they succeed, if they try more than once, that is. That's definitely true for me. And if you fail exactly half as much as you succeed, you're a pretty damn good entrepreneur.
Love that. Thank you for being honest, because that's one thing I was going to ask you is many highs as you've had, what were some of those lows, because I'm in it right now, where I feel like, for every one win, there's like 10 losses,
Yeah.
So I'm like, and I'm trying to
Yeah.
balance that out, but I'm also learning a ton, which is, I'm both a student and a teacher. And so that component really brings me joy. But the losses are still losses, and
And
a
it's
lot of them
painful.
are financial.
Yeah. I,
So I love that you talked about that.
You know, often the strategy for entrepreneurs is I'll tell you about a loss that I turned into a win.
Okay.
Um, but let me tell you about a loss that I didn't recover from. Because I think that's a more interesting story. Started a company. The founders started fighting. I was one of the founders. My boss from Siemens was the other founder. When I left Siemens, he was like, we were so good friends that when I left, he said, Ari, if you ever start a company, call me. And we worked together. We became co-founders. Um, so imagine that, right? We worked together wonderfully for 8 years. And then, I blame myself. Every entrepreneur blames themselves, but obviously it takes two to tango. There was a falling out. The company shut down because of that. I gave the money back to the investors. I gave $80,000 back to the investors. I hired a developer out of Google who, they make above $200,000 a year. He came to work for me for barely nothing based on the promise of the company and me. And I basically fired him before he started his first day, but he did quit Google. Um, I compensated him. I can't remember how much it was. I think it was like $10,000. I said, look, I fucked this up. Here's $10,000. And I lost a whole lot more than $10,000 in on my side, but I didn't take a dollar out of that money. And I went to my investor and I said, Lila, here's your money back. And she said, no, burn it, make the company work. I said, look, I just lost my co-founder. My dad has cancer, terminal cancer. I just can't build this company for you, but I'll tell you what, take the money back. I didn't take a dime for myself. I'm gonna pay Pavel a whole bunch of money because I screwed him over. And I did. And we're still friends. Pavel appreciates the way that I acted like a gentleman and compensated him, even though I didn't legally have to compensate him. Um, I said, Lila, if ever I come to you again and you're willing to, this money that I just gave to you, give it back to me, but for a different company at a different time. So I gave her back $80,000. And yeah, I don't think there's any way you can spin that as not a failure.
Oh, wow. First, that is just, I mean, even going through that, like I can't imagine, not just the financial component, but just
Yeah.
all the emotions, like
Oh,
because
huge.
it's such like I tell people, I'm like, unless you're doing it, you just don't get it. But like
Yeah.
it is such a mental fuck, like
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
like
100%. The worst part
it
about
is.
that is that co-founder that I lost, he won't speak to me today. So it's been years and he won't speak to me. He was like a father figure to me. He was like a person that I looked up to the most in the world, and yet he will not talk to me. So like I blame myself, but obviously it takes two to tango. And this is what you learn on the journey. You lose people that you love, but you learn a whole bunch of mistakes that you shouldn't do in the future. So every failure is a learning lesson. Makes you stronger, makes you smarter. But I haven't met an entrepreneur that doesn't tell that exact story.
Mhm.
They had a challenge, and then they lost somebody they cared deeply for. And the funny thing is, when these things happen, it's not with failure. It's not when the company is doing poorly. When the company is doing poorly, everybody comes together. It's with success. So we actually raised money. We had this huge success, and people got greedy, and then it got out of hand. So actually, it's the success that tore us down, not the failure.
And do you think a large part of that is ego?
Wow. Mine also, yes, absolutely. His also, absolutely. I mean, it's difficult, because human beings, we communicate in a way that's imperfect. So oftentimes we have great intentions, but if they come across incorrectly, then, the road to hell is paved with great intentions. So I think it's complicated. I don't believe that words matter, but shit, sometimes they matter very much. I believe that intent matters. I believe that actions matter, but sometimes words can be the difference between heaven and hell. And sometimes people get emotional, and people get emotional when money is at stake, and when you've raised a whole bunch of money, and people get greedy, then they get emotional, because they think, I deserve this or I deserve this. So suddenly they're like, okay, give me this or I'll quit, and that's what he told me, and I just wouldn't have it. So I said, I'm sorry, if you're leaving, you're leaving, but I'm not dishing over a third of the company to a consultant. Um, so, people get greedy. I handled it poorly. He handled it poorly. It was a clusterfuck, but you learn, you live, you grow, and you lose. You really do.
I really appreciate you sharing that because I've been on a completely different side,
Mm,
working in early and growth stage startups, like scaling
mm,
this. And it is always so interesting to me. I learn so much about people when it comes time to negotiate.
yeah, yeah.
And anytime money is involved, like you said, it's celebratory, but you start to see the true character
This is
come
right.
through. And it's just I mean, I can tell so many stories around that, so
Yeah,
it's really interesting that
yeah.
you shared that. So I really appreciate it.
So here's a different story that ended very well. Um, this was 20 something years ago. We actually created a great business. And two of the founders, myself and Erez, we both got an opportunity with our employers because we were building on the side. We were moonlighting, right? And on the weekends, we would drive up to Jerusalem and we would just write code. And we built this great business and we're making a lot of money. And Max, the main founder, basically, in retrospect, he was like, "Let's all quit our jobs and jump in it." The problem is that Erez got a huge promotion from the military. I got a huge promotion asking me to come to the United States and basically head up the consulting group. And we had to choose between these two incredible opportunities, build this company that we poured our respective wives back then, they're our girlfriends. They were fed up with us working our asses off on the weekends. They didn't see us. They were pissed. And so, we had to make this decision, moving to America or, going into the military for Ares or for Max. He was out already. He was all in. Um, and it was prime time for us to tear the company apart and have equity fights. And that's how we started. And we almost fucked it up. And then halfway through this, I say the following thing. I say, Max, I want you to be successful. I am hereby signing all my equity over to you, 100% of it. Erez has agreed to do the same, because we believe that there is no way in hell that you can succeed with two co-founders leaving without your ability to distribute equity in a fair way to the new co-founders. So we believe that we are dooming you to failure if we don't do this following thing, and we understand the financial, you know, what we're giving away. Um, and he said thank you. He wouldn't receive that offer, so he did write into the contract some clauses that if he was successful, we would get a certain payout. But it wasn't equity payout. It was like, okay, if he makes a certain amount of millions, we get a certain amount. So he did write something nice into the contract. But for me, giving him all the equity back and signing it over, he couldn't believe what he saw. He didn't believe what we did. Um, And many years later, Max came to the States, and he was at my home yesterday. So we were good friends till to date. And I think the way that you handle yourself in tough situations, this is what tough negotiation, that's how it started. I think the way that you handle yourself is a big thing, right? And that's why we're friends till today, and that's why he will follow me wherever I go. That's not a small thing.
That is that another gem because it is so true. And it's still, I mean, it's so rare that you hear about things like that because people, allow their
Oh,
ego, their greed, everything to get
yeah.
in the way. And it's human,
Yeah.
so
I wouldn't believe the story if I couldn't,
yeah,
bring Max and show you the contract. We still have the contract. We had
exactly.
lawyers because he was like, no fucking way you're agreeing to this. And I was like, yeah. And he's
Exactly.
like, okay, can I get a contract? He quickly went, got a lawyer to make a contract, and we signed it. And he
Oh,
was in shock. And I was like, dude, if I say white, it's white. If I say blue, it's blue.
yeah.
And from that day forth, I had a person that would follow me wherever I went.
Wow.
And I like Pavel. Why did he leave Google for me? Because if you behave with integrity and people know what kind of leader you are, they will follow you through flood and fire.
Facts. That is so true. Oh my gosh. What do you think is like a big blind spot in organizations? Like you've now built so many and worked in some, like what's a big blind spot in organizations?
Oh, it's ego. It's always ego. I mean,
Yep.
tell me any issue you've run into that you couldn't solve. It's ego,
Yep.
right?
So true.
Decision making, poor decisions. Why do you make poor decisions? Well, there's a lot of reasons why. You're not listening, ego. You're not doing the research, ego. You've made a prior decision that you won't overturn, ego. You've invested money and you won't acknowledge you made a mistake, ego. Like, doesn't matter where we go down, it's ego. So, I would say if you come in, this is true for even an employee, right? You come into, and I work as an employee, not only an entrepreneur. Right now, I'm not building anything. Right now, I'm working, as an executive in a startup, right? So, as an employee, what I look for is, I come into an organization, I seek out ego, and if I can't find it, wow, that's a great place to be. If I find it left, right, and center, next, I'll look for the next, like, thank you, no, thank you.
Yeah.
So stay away. Just stay. Look, everybody's got ego. We're all human. Like I have ego. But I think, does ego dominate you, or do you try as hard as you can to dominate your ego? That's the question.
Yes. Oh, so good. And I've seen this time and time again every time I get to negotiation stage. So, oh my gosh, very good. Thank you for that. Now, you have transitioned into doing something really cool. What inspired you to start Story Samurai, and how has it kind of evolved in your understanding of purpose and healing through your own story?
Yeah. So before I started Story Samurai, had a failure. Although I advised the chief revenue officer not to go down this investment strategy, he went down it anyway. What I explained is that COVID and the macroeconomic situation and interest rates and kind of the development of the industry is going to put us in a real tough situation. He didn't listen. He hired a whole bunch of people, which he then fired 12 months later. So I recommended a different strategy. Ironically, the day that he fired us all, the day before, I had a huge win with the small project that I was working that turned into something that could have basically saved the company. But he burned all the money and had to fire everyone, myself included. So I asked for a little bit of budget to basically help everybody find a job. They wouldn't give it to me. In fact, my face is still on their website. They haven't taken me off their website yet. They're kind of stealing my brand. Um, and yeah, we had this huge win. And the only thing they ended up doing is that my idea. So they actually went ahead and built that and they sold it. Um, so that left me the way that they screwed over the employees. That left me so hurt and angry. I helped each and every employee that was interested to find a job. So I set up interviews through them because I have a great network through University of Chicago, my investment community. So I helped everyone find a job. And even when I was done, they were like, "Oh, Ari, what about you?" And I was like, "Oh, actually didn't think about that." So I kind of, I forgot myself for last.
Yeah.
And when I had to make that decision, I was like, "Sure, yeah, I need to find a job." But then I kind of talked through it with my wife, and she was like, "No, like you don't have to, like, don't worry about it." So we took a year off. And it was time to reconnect with the family. It was time to, heal. and it was time to rethink my priorities in life because I was making a lot of stupid decisions. And through that, I got bored because, that's a thing.
Yeah.
We traveled a lot of places, but I really wanted to rethink about my life. And I thought the best way to do that is to basically talk to a bunch of interesting people and get their perspectives about life. And then I thought, well, the best way to talk to a bunch of interesting people is to give them something in return, some publicity. So it's like, if I created a podcast, people would come on my show, they'll share all their insights, and I could ask them the questions I want. It's not like a book. You read the book, they tell you what they tell you, you're done, right? But in a podcast, I can ask questions. So I was like, this is a great idea. So that's what I did. And at the high season of my podcast, I interviewed 40 people in a week.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Well, the fact that you've only been doing it a year and you told me that you have 160 episodes, I'm still blown away at that. And are you releasing them multiple times, like throughout the
I,
week?
I released them all within 30 minutes.
OMG.
Yeah.
Okay.
So imagine the day that, last year when I wasn't working and I was just doing just that,
Yeah.
I would release between 6 to 8 podcasts the same day within 2 hours of finishing the day. Yeah. I mean, to our audience, this doesn't mean anything, but the level of AI automation that you have to put into it in order to do that, and some compromises on quality because I don't have like the front and the back and I'm not trying to make money off this, so I don't have sponsors. So there's some discounts. But I also published to social media automatically, and I also published over 50 long form platforms automatically. So all that you need to have a bunch of AI and tech. So I put that all together, and it's easy. But yeah, it's kind of unique. Mostly people can't publish to 56 outlets within 30 minutes.
No.
Yeah,
I don't know a single. That's why I'm sitting here blown away. It's quite amazing. I can't think of any podcast that does that. I mean,
it's uncommon.
minus putting out a lot of social media content that a lot of these larger people with massive teams, like
Oh, I'm one person with no budget.
yeah,
My budget,
unbelievable.
I think I pay like $100 a month for some SaaS subscriptions. That's it. That's my budget, $100.
Okay, I need to talk to you after.
Sure, sure.
Because I'm definitely not just paying that. So, oh my gosh, amazing. Amazing. How did you come up with the name?
I studied Kung Fu for 10 years.
Okay.
So the idea of the warrior or the samurai is deeply ingrained in me. And the Bushido code or the warrior or the samurai's code is all about protecting the weak. And this idea has been ingrained in me and to a fault. And you saw it through the story that I just told you about helping all the other team. And I volunteer with Rotary, which is kind of a social organization, and I volunteer with a handful of other places. So this idea of, you need somebody strong to protect the weak and do what's right, has been ingrained in me from an early age. So that's what it is. It's the story samurai, and specifically what it's about. All my guests, they are the samurais in this case. They're each advocating for something, for an idea, for a startup, for a business, for their journey, for sharing their stories. Right? They are the story samurais. It's not me. So that's what it's about. It's about sharing the wealth of ideas. And there's nothing quite powerful as an idea that resonates, that changes the world. There's nothing quite as satanic as an idea that resonates and changes the world. So ideas for better or worse change the world. And yeah, I'm trying to nudge it in the direction of good through stories. The mighty the pen mightier than the sword and all that.
No, I love it. It resonated so deeply with me because I see myself as a warrior. Like as much as I am a lover, I'm also a warrior. And a large part of it is, my upbringing, my pain that I've turned into my purpose, and I've always been an advocate for people who didn't have the voice to advocate.
Yeah,
But what my healing was learning how to advocate more for myself,
yeah,
you know.
absolutely.
And so that's so
Absolutely.
love your,
Absolutely.
I love
And
it.
that's my biggest pet peeve, right? When people
Yeah.
don't stand up for themselves and believe in themselves and they kind of tell themselves this narrative of a victim. If you're victimizing yourself, you're
Oh,
disempowering yourself. So that's my huge pet peeve. Everybody does it. Everybody does it. It's not unique to anybody. And I would say that like rise up and be your own warrior. It's, sure, everybody's out to get you, but that doesn't matter. You can still succeed if everybody's out to get you. Because guess what? Everybody's out to get everybody else also. So you're not special. What makes you special is that you're going to work hard and you're going to be successful and you're going to believe in yourself and nobody else does. And when you fail, you're going to rise up and try again. I truly believe in that. And I think everybody has a story to tell. And you're still writing your story. Until you're dead, you're writing your story.
Yes.
Um,
And you
so,
can rewrite your story
oh,
at any
absolutely.
moment. And that's
Absolutely.
what has been such a gift for me because I have been, brought to my knees, but then I rise up again. And that's the warrior in me. Like I don't understand how to remain a victim. I would say you can be victimized, but you don't have to be a victim. And so,
I'll tell you, there are women that have been raped that don't see themselves as victims, and
oh,
they will
exactly.
communicate in a way that they are not victims. Sure, a terrible thing happened to me, but I am not a victim. And the reason that they speak this way is because of this philosophy, right? They want to have the control, which they should have. Nobody should take control away from your life and your destiny and everything that you can be. And just because you're in the lowest point of your life doesn't mean anything. That just means you're going to rise up from this point onwards. And I think that's a huge thing behind Story Samurai. It's showing these people. I had a drug addict on the top of a mountain, forgot to bring proper hiking boots, and he's my publisher now, by the way. So and he's saying, "Oh, I'm a stupid drug-addled idiot, and my feet are bleeding, and this is garbage and shit." And then a few days later, with his feet basically lacerated, he looks at this beautiful view. And he was climbing a mountain, and it's like, this is the most joy I've ever had in my life. And in that point, he says, I am in excruciating pain, but I feel joy.
Mhm.
And he says, pain does not equal suffering. Just because I'm feeling pain, it doesn't mean that I need to suffer. And that's the story of the victim. The victim feels pain and decides that he or she is suffering. The warrior feels pain and decides that there is a joy in the struggle.
Mm.
That's the difference.
That is so beautiful. I might steal that. I love that. That is so beautifully
It's it's
articulated.
it's not mine. I can't take credit for it.
I love it. Thank you for that. Well, you spoke about your publisher, your book, Engineering Excellence Unlocked. Love that as well.
Yes.
You break down like what it takes to build high-performing software teams.
Yes.
Like, what are maybe, 1 to 2 top leadership mistakes that you've seen, and then like one to
Yeah.
two, maybe top leadership, I guess tools that people can apply to their
Yeah.
high-performing team.
Yeah. So there's a few aspects to it. So the book talks about it in two different lenses. One is
Okay.
the technical lens, and the other is a people lens. And we talked about ego, but it's much more complicated than that. When you talk about the people lens, then really it's about the culture of making mistakes. So if you have a culture where mistakes are penalized, then people will actually be afraid to act. So if a person isn't learning, and is making the same mistake again and again, sure, that can be penalized. But if you're making new mistakes every time, that means you're growing. That means you're learning. That means you're becoming smarter. That should be welcomed because, today's environment, and this has been true forever, not just today, is so complicated that you can't afford your people to be afraid of making mistakes because they're just not going to do. Ron, my CEO at Celebrite, he said to me, Ari, if you don't do, you don't make mistake. That's the only way you don't make mistakes, by not doing. So that resonated with me, and I took it with, forward for a lifetime. So, but surprise, surprise, most companies don't have that culture. They have the culture of like, oh, you fucked up. Oh,
Mhm.
or you're gonna. So that's a huge thing. I think removing fear and it allows people to be the best version of themselves. So that's the first lens. It's the human lens. There's a lot more to it. We can talk about this for, well, it's a whole book.
Yeah.
So so we could talk about it for many hours, but this is the high level thing. On the technical side, there's a lot of aspects to very successful software companies. And it breaks down into basically the key people, which is sales, marketing, engineering, and senior leadership, and then customer success, L&D, right? These are let's call them most of the buckets, right? Um, and product management, obviously. So each of those buckets has a really key role. And what's really important is actually not about how these key roles do their job. It's about how these key roles work with each other. So if you kind of think about that, then what it gives you is this process of how each person or each function needs to work with each other. And that's messed up mostly. So, how does product communicate with QA? How does customer success communicate with engineering? Does product give processes to QA before engineering builds it, yes or no? There's so many key processes that people are just doing wrong. And then on the technology side, when you think about automatic testing and regression testing, which is automatic testing of everything you've already built, if you try to do that manually, you can do that for a year, your first year, but after 2, 3, 4 years, you got so much software, no way in hell, like you're done. And then what happens is your customers find issues that you had no idea you created, and then you have churn and you have disappointment, and then your customer success team walks out on you because they're like, and I had this. I had my customer success team and Siemens tell me this before we made this change. Said, I'm a cheerleader. And I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, well, the only thing I'm doing is telling my customers, like, don't worry, it's going to be okay, and you can do this, and I know it's hard, and I know it doesn't work. So John was telling me, like, this sucks. I don't want to do this job. So if you get to that stage because your quality is so bad that your customer success, your implementers, your all that, John said, like, this job sucks, and he was right. So quality matters, and quality is a derivative of process. And process includes within it how you work with other functions. And people can't work if they can't be their best selves. So it's all together, and that's why I call it excellence. And the other thing is what's changed in the last 2 years is AI is coming to the game. So the name of the book will actually be changed before it's published, 1st of January next year. And it's going to be changed to include something like AI, because now every single one of those processes is now completely new because you can do them completely differently with AI. So what I'm discovering is that, I before I finished writing the book, it was obsolete. So I have to rewrite the book to now include the AI processes of the future. And this is amazing, right? The way that the AI processes are going to work in the future. Just give you an example, right? Basically, the UX designers are now using prompt agent tools to create UIs in minutes, right? And then product managers are creating mockups with real code that customers can use and give feedback on. And only after that cycle can it go into engineering to actually work in production and with thousands and millions of users. But the tools that AI is generating is just fundamentally changing the way product, customer success, QA can now write prompt testing. Like it's crazy. So
It's
the world
mind
is
blowing.
changing in ways that people don't imagine.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that it's creating a situation where the laggards, the people who are not adopting AI, they're just going to lose. And then there's going to, I believe that every single engineer that doesn't work for a B2C company is going to be, their job is going to be in risk. But the good news is that even though I think half of the engineers are going to lose their jobs, they're going to find different jobs in different places. But their job will change a little bit. They're going to work for B2C companies as opposed to B2B companies. So that's a huge and wonderful change that is going to be hard. But as long as you keep up to date with AI and you're learning your new trade that's becoming, you'll do fine. If you decide you're going to put your head in the ground and not learn AI, you're going to be trouble. You won't find that next job.
No, and that's such great advice. I'm a career coach, and that's one of the things that I really focus heavily on is, getting people comfortable with exploring AI. And I'm like, how can you use it to, enhance what you do? Not to fully take over what you do, but to enhance it. And that's where we're at. We're seeing teams getting shaved down, because of
Oh,
AI.
100%.
I mean, like, it's mind blowing. Like, I mean,
100%.
even the larger companies who would rarely lay people off. I think Google had their process that they laid their contract recruiters off every year,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
for the most part larger companies rarely laid people off. We're
yeah.
seeing it in, I mean, massive
In
amounts.
droves, in droves. So
Yeah, it's
here's
mind
the look, here's the problem, right? If you look at economics over thousands of years, then there's only one driver that actually works for equity. Just one. There's only one thing that redistributes equity, and it's innovation. There's nothing else that, from an economic standpoint, actually redistributes equity. Now,
blowing.
why is that? Because, once people have equity, they want to hang on to it. So there is every single structure in the world is forcing the consolidation of equity. It's the rich getting richer. The poor don't get poorer, actually. If you look at economics, the poor actually also get richer, but not the same way that the rich get
Same
richer,
rate.
right? So the poor today are richer than the poor in the past, 100%. The poor are better off than any poor person in the past. However, obviously, they're not as rich as the rich, right? And the rich are richer, the poor are also richer. So when we look at this situation, nothing redistributes equity because the rich don't want to let go of their richness. The poor are better off, but that's because all boats are rising. So then the question is, well, how do we actually give the opportunity for the hardworking, intelligent, poor who want to work hard and make it? How do we make them rich? Because that's what our society is about. It's about giving the opportunity to everyone. And it turns out that technology is the only way to do it, right? You can take people who have nothing, but they're brilliant. They can work hard, they can use technology. And what's happening with ChatGPT and softwares like Cursor is that anybody, the film Anybody Can Cook. What was it, Ratatouille or something like that? So what's happening is anybody can code. So my daughter is an artist. Here's my argument. Artists nowadays are the luckiest artists ever because there's a renaissance that's about to happen. And in fact, if you don't need to have engineering knowledge in order to be an engineer, to create engineering products, code, then and anybody can do it, anybody can cook, anybody can code, then artists can code, journalists can code. So if you've democratized the power of engineering to every single person on Earth through a software like Cursor, Cursor is going to be, I think, one of the most expensive stocks ever, right? There, it's going to be huge. It's either Cursor or one of Cursor's competitors, but it looks like to me, it looks like they're going to win. So if you've given that power to the masses, what's going to happen? It's going to be crazy.
Mhm.
So I think artists are going to have a renaissance. I think musicians are going to have a renaissance. I think you're going to be seeing artists and musicians and painters start software companies alone, one person, and they're going to be successful. And the reason that they're going to be successful is because they have these beautiful minds of creation and beauty. And I think that's what we're going to need in the future because engineering is just not going to be such a difficult problem anymore.
It's so exciting. Well, it's so exciting. We're seeing it now. Like, I mean, people who were working at, Target or, like stores
Yes.
like that are now using
Yes.
AI and like building
Yeah.
businesses. And
Yes.
it's amazing to me. Even someone like myself, I'm not technical, but, I'm working on an app right now. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
it's amazing the capabilities are, but you just have to get past the fear.
Yes.
And there are so many tools out there, but it's like trying them and seeing, like
Yeah.
you said,
Yeah.
there are so many competitors. It's like try them, see which one works.
It's
But
the only force that creates equity in the world. It's
yeah,
technology. And the problem is, and we need to be fair to our listeners, there's always winners and losers. When we talk about economics, there's losers. And there's going to be a whole bunch of people that are very unhappy because you can't move equity from, A to B without there being losers. So, what is the truth of the fundamental, laws of the universe is that energy remains, right? But it changes form. And that's the law of conservation of energy. And wealth is a form of energy. So, it's going to change form. It's going to move from one place to another. And I think that the people that are going to win nowadays is going to be anybody who's brilliant, and it doesn't matter if you have no education. It doesn't matter if you have a PhD. It might help you if you have a PhD in certain cases, but you could definitely be successful if you've been working in Target for 3 years and you have no education. So if you are truly brilliant, then you can win. And that's what the Renaissance is about. It's not going to be about, stopping to being, because everybody's growth was stunted, right? Before the Renaissance, because everybody was drunk, so their growth was stunted. And then suddenly coffee and tea came along, tea in some places of the world, and coffee in others. And then suddenly people are actually growing. So doors were shorter because everybody's growth was stunted. And suddenly nobody was drunk anymore. So, we're going to have a renaissance that is very different than the previous renaissance. It's not going to be about sanitary. It's not going to be about, having clean sources of water, which was the problem. It's not going to be about healthcare. It's going to be totally different. I don't know what it's going to look like, but it's going to be amazing for some and it's going to be
yeah,
awful for others.
yeah. And don't you think, like, with all of these changes and, all the innovation that's happening right now, like, it will affect so many different things. Like, it used to be where people would go through school, try and get into a college, and then, get a job. It's like that path is going to look so different.
It's going to be exactly the same. I'll tell you why.
What? You think
Yeah,
so?
yes, I'll tell you why.
Get out of here, Ari.
Yeah,
No,
I'll tell you why.
wait, are
I'll
you
tell you why.
serious?
I'm
Okay, tell
serious.
me what.
So let me say it's going to be exactly the same, but it's also going to be
Okay,
totally different. So let me tell you why.
okay, okay.
Why were universities and schools built, right? So if we think about the fundamental reason that we have schools and universities, it's because the workforce, the corporate America or corporate everywhere, needed a workforce. And not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, right? So there's a lot of people that want to work for a living. And there's a lot of people that want to be part of the workforce. And there's a lot of entrepreneurs and investors that want to pay people to do a job. So what happens is that in order for those people to get educated on the stuff that they need to do in order to be successful, they need to be educated by somebody. Now, that somebody is your education system. It's your K to 12, and then it's your universities. Now, if you ask me, will the universities that exist today exist tomorrow? I don't know. But if you ask me, will there be an equivalent form of education that will
Okay,
be very different, that will allow people to transition from a state of non-expert to expert in certain fields? Absolutely. Now,
okay.
will it be Harvard and Stanford? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hope it won't be, quite honestly. But because I think that those organizations are corrupt. But on the other hand, those organizations do a lot of good things. They have a lot of good research, right? Those organizations have brought
They
cures for
have a lot
cancer
of
and AIDS.
resources.
They have a lot of resources. We can get
Charging what they
political.
charge. Yeah.
They take a lot of money. There's a lot of
Yeah.
politics. There's a lot of nepotism. Like,
Yes.
but you know what? The new organizations that come along, right? So half of them will fall apart. Half of them will stick around, probably. But you know what? The new organizations that will come along, they'll be corrupt too. Like, it's human nature. So if you think that burning something down and building something new is a cure, it's not. Human beings corrupt the shit out of everything we do. So, I don't know. Do you want to burn something down just to build something new that's going to be worse? Or I don't know if it's going to be better.
It's so true. That is such a beautiful way to look at it. And I didn't think about that, but I definitely thought the traditional university that we have today will not be the same, like have the
I don't
same amount
know.
of entry,
Like,
but it's hard to
maybe,
say
I don't
completely,
know.
but that's what I foresee.
You don't think that people are going to want to congregate together to listen to an expert, to learn from that expert, to enrich their knowledge? I think they're going to want to do
Oh
that.
no, still, absolutely. But
Isn't
in the
isn't
same
that a
university
university?
form, I don't think so.
Well, yeah, no, the university of stuff today and tomorrow will be different, but
Yeah.
universities have been evolving. The way that we've been getting education 100 years ago and 50 years ago and today is different. So they have been evolving, maybe slower than most other industries for sure. But yeah, this is definitely a kick in their butt, a slap in their face, maybe a punch in their guts. They're going to have to evolve, and if they don't evolve, they will die. But I got to tell you, this idea of congregating, learning, making friends, creating networks, that's not going to change ever.
I mean, and we're seeing that right now in real time with all the communities popping up,
Yes.
so it's, again, like, I think it will be different, but,
Yeah.
so yeah, really great. I do have a question for you because you are also on the investment team at
Yes.
Chicago Booth,
Yes.
Angels Network of Silicon Valley, very
Yes.
lifelong title. And with your Techstar alum,
Yes.
background, like, what do you look for in founders? I'm always
Oh,
curious. I love asking this
yeah.
question.
Easy. Mentorability. So mentorability. If a founder is willing to listen, change, like doesn't have to take my advice, but he has to go and do the research, think about what was said, and then come back and say, no, that's wrong because, or that's right because, or I went down a third path. As long as the founder learns and has good rationale, but if the founder just is stuck, it's game over. The second thing is also very easy. It's traction. It's the ability to very quickly make huge traction. So if you can, within zero time, you tell somebody, hey, why don't you do this? And with zero time, they have 100 people that have answered a survey. That level of ability to execute is amazing. So I think startups aren't about ideas. There's ideas that die on dozen. It's about the ability to execute. So if you're executing fast and you're getting traction fast, then you take the number of traction you've created, if that could be calculated, you divide it by the amount of time that you've done it. That acceleration factor, call it A, that's the only number that matters. Because if you get $1 million over 10 years, or if you get $100,000 in 10 minutes, I pick the guy who got $100,000 in 10 minutes every day.
Wow. Oh, I love that. That's so good. I didn't even think about the traction, like that. And I haven't heard many people say that. I've asked this question to several people, and I'm always so curious, because there's so many founders that are getting, turned down and some that are, getting poured into. And some of them I'm like, wow, how did you get that much money? But I'm
Oh,
like,
they don't. Founders don't know. How do they know why investors chose them? They don't know. And investors won't tell mostly. Like I'll tell people, but mostly investors won't tell. They'll
I
give you a long
know.
laundry list of shit and they won't tell you the truth.
Yeah, I wish they did.
Well, you got it here today.
Exactly. Well, I something I'm always curious about too is with you doing all of that, all the stuff that you're doing, pouring into others, how do you pour into your own cup? How do you
Oh,
fuel yourself back up as a father, husband, an entrepreneur, and then, all this stuff that you're doing? How do you take care of yourself, mind, body, and soul?
date nights, big one. Getting away from my three children sometimes is a great thing. But we do spend a lot of time with our kids. Yesterday, I was practicing Taekwondo with my son, so we go practice karate together. And we got a private teacher, and for me, it's a great excuse to beat my child without child services being called, and for him to beat his dad under a controlled environment. So we get to take out some aggressions. Um, and he's massive. He's a man. Like he's 13, but he's huge.
Oh,
He's stronger than me actually. Um, the only reason I can still keep up a fight is because I have 10 years of experience. So I have good technique, but he's really strong. And he knows it. I tell him he's stronger than me. So he's like, Daddy, how do you still win? I was, well, I have technique. But once you have that technique and you're stronger than me, I'm done. I'm stepping away. So that's fun. We hike a lot. I bike every day. I invite my son to join me biking, but he doesn't always want to wake up 5 a.m. I go hiking with the whole family and we travel. And I love cooking. We just got back, and if you can combine two of those things together, then that's awesome. So we just got back from traveling in Italy, and we did a week-long cooking cast. So those are the things that are awesome. A lot of compromise, right? I do a lot of things that my wife and kids want to do that I don't really care for. And that's fine, right? Everybody finds their way, that the stuff that's important to them. I hate beaches, I hate sun, I hate salty water. So yeah, I know it's weird. I know it's weird. But everything about islands turns me off. So yeah, I know it's terrible. Half of your audience is like, this guy's an ass. Terrible person.
I
But
just have
yeah, I
never heard it. I'm like,
never heard. Yeah, I
really?
know. No, I hate it. I hate the sun. I don't like the touch of sand on my feet. I just don't like it. So yeah, I'll do those things with my family, but I absolutely hate it. So they'll do things that I enjoy. So we did an 11-hour a day cooking class for 5 days. Yeah,
What do you do on your own though?
on my own.
Mhm.
Don't have much of that time.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't read as much as I want to, but I like reading. I like listening to music. I bike a lot on my own because my son won't wake up that early. Um, I mean, it's fun to do things together, but sometimes I'm just so freaking exhausted. I just go to sleep or have a bath or a shower. I do enjoy pools and jacuzzis. So like hot spa, like spas and what's it called, the springs. Colorado has a lot of springs. Oh my God, that's wonderful. Um, so
Love
yeah, I
it.
mean, find your joy. Everybody will find their joy. You just need to
No,
seek it.
absolutely. But I love that you said it is hard to find time for
Yeah,
yourself,
yeah, that's
because
true.
there's so many people in that position right now,
Yeah,
especially mothers and, shout out to anyone with children, because it is hard to find that time when you do have them because you are
yeah,
trying to spend as much time as you can with them because as a parent, we get 18 summers, and then they're
yeah.
kind of off
That's right.
doing their
That's
thing.
right.
Doesn't mean they won't come back if you're good to them,
Yeah,
but
that's right.
they are off.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
I'm constantly juggling that. But
When we look, we've been very lucky with some really
yeah,
good, financial boons. But when we were dirt poor, we would get in the car, all of us. We weren't always five, we were less at that time. And we had no money, but we would drive out and see the countryside, and Colorado is beautiful. And sometimes we slept in a car. Sometimes we slept in the most affordable, cheapest thing, and we would sleep in tents a lot because we just didn't have the money. So we would still go on these crazy, like, amazing destinations, but we slept in a tent. And we bought the cheapest food that we could because we couldn't eat in restaurants. So that was out of the. So my point is that you can be dirt poor and happy. You can be rich and miserable. And I think it's probably easier to be rich and miserable. Um, but it's really hard to be poor and happy. But I think it's possible because, we did it. And I think it's just about finding joy. You can be in pain, but still find joy. And no doubt in my mind that if you're having financial challenges, you're feeling pain, a lot of pain. But you can still find the joy because it's right there in the eyes of your son or daughter every single day.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And they do not care.
They don't care. They don't even know. They have
Don't
no
even
idea.
know. So
They don't
they
know.
just want your presence, you know.
That's
So
true.
love that.
That's
What is
true.
one truth, you now live by that your younger self wouldn't believe that you live?
Uh, Giving brings more joy than taking.
Hmm.
I was such a selfish little bastard. I think
Are
that,
you?
yeah, I was. I was. It's true. Yeah, I think most of us are when we're young, right? Unless it's beaten into us. But um, but yeah, I was a selfish bastard, and I didn't understand the joy in giving, and it took a while to figure it out.
Love that. Thank you so much for this soulful conversation. Oh my goodness, learned a ton. So great to get to know you and all that you're doing. Please give him a follow. Tune into his 160 plus episodes that he has, and definitely go buy his book. Thank you so much, Ari, for joining, and blessing Sunday Soul Day.
Blessing Sunday, Sully. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. And everyone, as always, have an amazing Sunday. And do us a favor, leave your favorite part about this conversation in the comments below or something new that you learned.